Chapter 4. The Guillotine. Officer Chan was a small man, maybe 5'6" and 145 pounds on a good day, but he walked like he was 6'4", the kind of man who would rather pick a fight with the world instead of admit that he wasn't the biggest in the room. He wore his little man's complex like a uniform, buzz cut clipped within regulation down to the milliliter, aviator glasses perched like he was gearing up for battle, and the sharpest, most starched uniform in lineup. He strutted like a soldier, though he had never served a day in his life. Shan loved women almost as much as he loved talking about them. He bragged to anyone who'd listen that he was sleeping with the chief secretary. When she cut him off after finding out she was not the only one in the department, he went back to prowling for the next name in his brag book, though he had a wife and kids at home. Self hatred for his size rolled off in waves, and everyone saw it. But in the department, being a good old boy meant you belonged no matter how toxic you were. He talked about the fights in ways some men talk about war stories. To him, there was no difference between someone resisting and someone trying to get away, though there was a very big difference. He made circumstances bigger, messier, and more dangerous than they had to be, and then would laugh while patting the arrest sheets for fun. Around people he liked, he wanted to impress them. He would transform into a different man. All grins, head nods, yes, sirs, of course, sir. He was the epitome of passive aggressive in his people pleasing. Under him, I learned two things. First, that the power in the wrong hands doesn't just corrupt, it poisons. And second, that not all lessons are worth learning. Chan didn't teach me how to be a cop. He taught me how to spot the men who use the badge to settle their own insecurities. From day one, I could tell that he didn't like me. The first morning I got into his car, he didn't say good morning. He didn't give me his expectations. He looked over at me and said, "What is your problem?" That was it. No warm up. No how's the training going, just straight to the point like he was checking off a box. Step one, attack. I asked him what did he mean, trying to keep my voice even. He didn't hesitate. "I heard about you," he said. "You told on the RTOs at your last department. You're not going to make it here as a cop." Then he hit me with, you don't even have command presence. There's nothing about you that demands respect." It was like I was watching a bad movie where the villain turns to the camera and insults the audience. I was standing right there, alive, breathing, doing the job, and he was talking about me like I was some character in his personal drama. "I'm here, I'm me, and you're just going to say that like I'm not even in the car?" He wasn't done. He went on to say that the two RTOs were his friends, referring to the officers that were involved in the class action lawsuit that was paid out. And I believed them, he said. I kept a flat tone. I said, "Okay, you're entitled to believe whatever you want." That answer must have hit a nerve because his breathing changed, sharper, shorter. He narrowed his eyes. "Yeah," he said finally. "I believe you're a rat then." At that moment, I made the decision. If he's going to play dirty, I was going to play smarter. I started collecting copies of the most common police reports that Chan wrote, property crime calls, arrests, field interviews, and I studied them until I could basically write them in my sleep. I then began using his exact style in my own reports. Same flow, same phrasing, even the weird little quirks in his grammar. When he'd tear into me about how awful my report writing was, bragging that he had to hold on my reports until the weekend, then knock back a case of beer just to stomach reading the trash I submitted, I'd hand it right back to him. "Sir, I thought this is the way that you wanted the report written. Can you please show me which sections need to be rewritten?" The look on his face each time was priceless. He knew that I had him cornered. To critique me harshly, he'd have to admit that his own report writing wasn't much better. And the truth was, his report writing was good. It was clear and concise. But it was stripped bare. There was no color, no context, no detail, just the bare bones. I came, I saw, I found a crime, I arrested. In the end, I passed training with Chan. Not because he wanted me to, but because he couldn't fail his own words. My midterm. I was paired with an officer whose job was to evaluate me for the first two phases. This was the department's oversight protocol, a checkpoint to ensure trainers weren't just checking off the boxes, but were actually teaching, and that the trainees were retaining the skills needed to move forward. That was Officer Jocks. Jocks was assigned to our street team before returning back to patrol. He was a member of our SWAT team and range master. I had already crossed paths with him at the range during our department's firearm qualifications. From the start, he made it clear that the range was his domain, his baby, and as a range master, he had zero tolerance for carelessness. He didn't need to shout to command respect. His silence carried weight. He was a presence you felt before you heard him. Officer Jocks was a middle aged black man, clean shaven, with a calm soul that steadied everyone around him. He carried himself like someone who had already seen enough in the world to know what mattered and what did not. His body looked like it was built for war. Muscular legs like tree stumps, a chiseled waist, massive arms that made him look like he could lift an entire squad car if he had to. He was ready for any and everything. But what stood out the most wasn't his strength, it was his patience, his quiet control that was behind it. Riding with him was a breath of fresh air. He was cool as a cucumber. No theatrics, no ego, no hidden agenda. He gave directions once and expected me to follow. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. His calm steadiness gave me a space to show what I could do without background noise of cruelty. Jocks was stoic, but not cold. He had more patience than almost anyone I had met in uniform at that point. He had a way of letting silence do the teaching. He would always step out of the patrol car after me, not to undermine, not to hover in a suffocating way, but to gauge whether I knew what I was doing. If I hesitated, he noticed. If I moved with confidence, he'd let me carry it through. He understood what observing meant. For the first time, I wasn't being tested, I was being trusted. When I needed guidance, Jocks was always close by to give it. He had a way of stepping in right at the right moment, not to take over, but to steady me and to direct me if I spiraled. One night we responded code 3 to a vehicle versus true call. The initial 911 caller had been patched through CHP before the caller was transferred to us. They reported seeing a car take flight off of the freeway, but they hadn't seen it land. They couldn't see where, and they couldn't say where it went, or how far down the embankment it had traveled, or what we'd find when we got there. When we pulled up to the off ramp, we saw nothing. No tread marks, no damage to the guardrail, no smoke, no screams or moans. Absolutely nothing. We had to go down the woodland filled embankment to find the wreck. The silence was deafening, but Officer Jock's presence filled the scene before his voice did. He moved with the same calm precision he had shown me at the range, never rushing, never flinching, even as I froze at the sight of the scalped mother and her mangled children. Jocks didn't falter. He gave me the room to absorb what I was seeing, but he also was close to catch me if I broke. The driver, a woman, had been traveling at a high rate of speed as she exited the freeway with her two children in the car. She lost control on the turn. The vehicle vaulted over the guardrail and crashed down an embankment and struck a tree with such force that the frame wrapped around it like foil. No one survived. The children were so badly crushed and mangled, they were unidentifiable. It was the first time I saw a person scalped. The precision cut, almost surgical in its appearance, from a low hanging branch that sliced her as the car tore through. The sight of it froze me in place. I was trained for chaos, not tested under pressure, though. Nothing prepares you for this kind of violence delivered by an accident, by circumstances, and by nature itself. The car was so wrapped tight around the tree, it didn't look like a crash. It looked more like the vehicle was swallowed whole. The mother's body was broken open in the same way that felt unnatural. Her children were tangled in the wreckage, as if time had folded in on them. The image never left me, not the gore, but the stillness that followed. The way death was so heavy in the air, absolute and unmoving. It was the moment I understood that no academy scenario, no range, no textbook could ever teach how to process this part of the job. I remember standing there, my heart hammering the adrenaline dump again, me competing with the adrenaline inside of my body and with the weight of what I was seeing. The image stared into me. The woman's injuries, the violence of the impact, the brokenness of the future, and what had been such an ordinary drive seconds before. And Jocks was there, not panicked, not detached, just steady. His presence was always